De mare.
Maskofi, Sabah al Khair, good morning, Grand Rising, Blessed Rising, Bonjour. Please drop in with all the other languages.
Sanbonan, Manuel, Lochan, Naushen, Da.
Tristan, are you chiming in? My sister says Sabah al Full from the kitchen as she makes her. Tristan, are you chiming in?
Oh, greetings, everybody.
My sister says Sabah al Full from the kitchen as she makes her.
It sounds like Tristan has two streams going on because it's like a delay feedback.
Oh, I said greetings. Wait, is there a delay right now?
Yes.
No. I won't say who, but I think some of our delay.
I hear y'all, but do you hear me in delay?
We're hearing you now. No, I'm here.
Okay, I hear, because I hear you. I don't hear it. So there's no delay right now? Nope, so I'm good. All right, well, greetings, everybody. Looking forward to the follow-up today. Morning.
Okay, I think we're not speaking microphones out. Let's see if this will work. All right. Are you hearing me fine? Okay. Give me a nod or something. Family, wherever you're tuning in from the world, please drop a link, say something. Say hello, say Grand Rising. Tell us how you say good morning in your language and tell us where you're tuning in from. If you're not where you're from, tell us where you're from and where you're tuning in from. This is back by popular demand. We had a helping conversation yesterday that was viewed, I think, by more than 200 people. And we're back to get into it a bit deeper, to find out, again, not just the importance of language, not just the power of language, but the power we have to revitalize our languages. As we've said over and over yesterday, in many ways, there's been and continues to be a deliberate attempt for us to not speak our language, for us to communicate in languages that are not ours, that do not express what we need expressed, because they don't represent us, they're not our languages. Now, in the same context, we've also discussed some of the languages that are entirely endangered. In my case, I'll speak about Nubian. I went to my village earlier this year in January, and it's my goal, and I said that it's my goal to learn my language because I don't know how to speak it. Now, when I say learn it, I mean speak it and write it, because as you can see, this time from the beginning of the panel, you can see my name, my name on there. The truth is, Nubian kids today don't know that this language is a written language. However, I digress. It's still really early here. It's 6:30. So we have a new family member, and this is what I love about Africa Week 2020. We were having a conversation yesterday. A family member tuned in, and now this family member is on the screen with us, so we must welcome her. And I will ask the fam here to do the introduction, the classic Africa Week 2020 way. You heard it yesterday, you'll hear it again from Tristan and Pule. Who are you? What keeps you up at night? And how can the family help you sleep better? Unati, we start with you.
Wow, that third one is a bit tricky. My name's Unati Lopekwe. What keeps me up at night? My purpose, trying to figure out if I'm on the right path in life, if I'm doing what I'm meant to be doing on this planet. Those are the things that keep me up at night. What can the fam do to help me sleep?
How can we help you with your purpose?
I think if everyone keeps doing what they're doing, like the work that they're doing, that actually indirectly inspires me and that motivates me even to keep going. So yeah, even from yesterday, I learned a lot, and there were a lot of interesting, facts and things being presented, and that actually motivated me to rethink, where I'm at and how, sorry, and how I can move forward. So keep doing what you're doing, fam. You're inspiring. Yeah.
Thank you, thank you. Pule. You're muted.
Askis. Dumelang kaofela sanibonani nonke ezindlini. NginguPule kaJanolish Mpokoti bovuka amagayisa waginqa zonke isihlahla. Ngingumcwaningi wezilimi zesintu nezabathwa e-University yaseKapa. I'm telling you that my name is Pule kaJanolish, or Pule Welch, and I am a linguist at the University of Cape Town, and I'm a researcher in various topics of decoloniality and Afrocentricity, and an advocate of African writing systems. So my main work is to promote writing systems of the African continent, and to put forward and promote marginalized language in everywhere, but particularly in Southern Africa, particularly those language forms that are not official, that are not sanctioned, that are not for any governmental purpose used frequently, or not for any media purpose used frequently, to see those things forward. And I think that really is the mission. Is just the idea that in order for us to grow language and grow culture, it has to be used. The more you use it, the more you deepen it and expand it, as Nguri said. And what I appreciate about this space is that it's connecting people who are doing different things, sometimes in silos and separately. And I think the energy comes when you come together and connect the different projects together. So that's what I appreciate. Thank you.
All right. All right, morning everybody. It's Tristan Samuels. I'm an Africologist, Jamaican Africologist. I study at Temple University and my main research focus is looking at Medu Neter, which, in Eurocentric terms, we know as the language of ancient Egypt. I look at it from an Afro-Caribbean linguistic and I think what my research serves to do in a broader context is to, through language, bridge the perceived gap between African people in the diaspora and African people in the continent. Now, how can what was the second question? Is what can the family do to keep you awake, Dima?
Yeah. Who are you? What keeps
Not
you up
awake,
at night?
but
Whether it's your research or your purpose, or someone who's bothering you and you need us to collectively pray for them tonight.
I'll do the second part of what you asked.
What can the family do to help you? How can we help you further what you're working on? I can't hear you, Tristan. Can everyone else hear Tristan? No?
No, I can't hear.
Okay. Let's invoke this banner and see if the power works. Okay, Tristan might be logging off and back on. In the meantime, Mama Lele, what are you doing? Come through. Here, I am dropping the link.
Mo is commenting on Facebook.
I know.
Now.
Hey. Click on this link. Come through. Also, the conversation is an open dialogue. So if you have something to say, if you are working on revitalizing your language or working on your endangered language in any capacity, and you have something to add to this conversation, add your voice, click on that link and come through. In the meantime, until Tristan and Momalele come back, Pule, you were saying
Yes.
that you work on the not official languages, and from yesterday we know that South Africa has 10, and if we count English, 11 official languages.
That's right. Yeah, there's 11 official languages. Yeah.
Are there non-official, or are there how many languages are there that are not officially recognized as?
Well, I think the first thing that's important to know is that the definition of languages is political. It's about political power. So the difference between a language and a dialect is just politically defined. The way we name a language is according to politics. So you can enumerate languages and say, for example, in China, everything is called Chinese, but in actual fact, there's many mutually intelligible and unintelligible languages. Like you can't understand someone if they're speaking Mandarin, or and someone else is speaking Cantonese. They won't understand each other, right? But they are called all dialects of Chinese, something called Chinese. So there's a political definition of the language. It's not. You don't. It's not about something in the language itself. So language is always defined by politics. So we can define, if we want to do little political structures and say these are political units, we can find so many languages in South Africa, 50 languages, something like that. Whatever, you can do that. But in terms of like mutually intelligibility and those things, all language is quite close, but we have identity associated with it, and people being marginalized and being pushed to the edges. Someone made a very important comment by saying promoting endangered languages is not about the language, it's about stop marginalizing people. It's like the people who speak that needs to be inside the debate. They cannot be outside. They have to be inside the debate. So it's about the reason why a language dies is because we are excluding people. That's the the matter of it. And I think you said that very well last time, Dima, and your mic is off. I didn't hear what you're saying, but
No, that's probably a good thing. No, I was agreeing in complete excitement. So I was saying yes, really, really loudly. It's oh, you so nailed hit that on the nail. Oh my God, nailed it on the head. Whatever. That is so very on point. So very on point. The Nubian language is in Egypt and Sudan called Rutana. They call it Rutana by now. You have even Nubians calling it Rutana, although calling it Rutana is one of the ways of belittling the language to make it fit that it is not one, that it is unintelligible. It's the same way they said the language in Gibraltar is gibberish, or it's the same way it's the way to say this is something that no one will understand. It's Rutana. But now you have Nubians saying, "Oh, Rutana, go. We speak Rutana," or "I tell you in Rutana," but it's not. That's the way to make it not a language but a dialect. And when it's a dialect that no one understands and no one should learn, because it's not something anyone should speak. And even today, to try and explain to, well, now the elders in the family, in the village, in the community, that we need to step away from calling it Rutana, and it's still a debate because somehow some people have owned it being Rutana, as in, yes, it's something that we use and other people don't understand, because eventually it was used as a code, like I said, for war. But it gets to a point where even that politicization of it's not recognized as such, and it becomes something that is assumed by the community itself. And they claim that these labels that, again, confirming that they are unintelligible languages. That's so true. Thank you for that.
And it takes it back to what Tristan was saying yesterday about he doesn't use the words like Creole and Patois and these kind of things, because that's basically saying it's not a language. Yes, it's like when you say it's a Patois, it means it's like a slang for, you understand, which is the case with something like the Jamaican language. People assume that it's some sort of Jamaican slang English, where it not that it has autonomy as its own language. And I was saying yesterday on the chat that I had the great opportunity last year of meeting and speaking with Professor Hubert Devonish from the University of the West Indies, who is a long-time activist promoting the Jamaican language and making it advocating for it to be an official language in Jamaica. And I would love to if Tristan can comment about that as well, because I'm sure he knows the prof. And the spelling system as well, the writing of the Jamaican language, that Jamaican language, which is spelled Jamaican. Jamaican. There's a spelling system that was introduced for that language. And the idea is for people to recognize this as autonomy, as the national language of Jamaica, so that it becomes official with English as well. And not to use the word like Patois. The same with Niger. So Niger, we use the word Niger and not Pidgin, because Pidgin makes it seem like it's not a language, it's a pigeon. You understand? So it's Niger language. The same way, I don't understand why sometimes people call the languages of Imaziren, that the Berber languages, or Berber, because that means barbarian. You understand? It's the same thing that you're talking about. I'm confused as why people use those words that are actually meant to like deride the way that, or like exoticize or make foreign and make strange the way people speak. Then to use that for your own thing, it doesn't, to me, it doesn't make sense. So I support Tristan's thing of, no, I don't use the word Creole, I don't use the word Patois, I don't use those kind of words. It's a language, and it's an African language. The Jamaican language is it's a Jamaican language, and it's African language. I support that idea.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes,
I totally agree with that.
Well, go ahead, Unati, please.
Okay, I was gonna say I totally agree with that, because it's also like a status thing, so, or at least prestige. So if you don't declare whatever you speak a language, then it doesn't get taken seriously. You know? Yeah, so I just wanted to add that in there as well.
Thank you. We have Mo Malele back in the square with us. I'm so gonna take square that for thank you to Fusion for introducing it into my life, because really we're all holding our squares here. Okay, Mo Malele, for those of you family members who have missed her interventions and her joining our previous reunions, go back and find her. But Mo Malele, for those of you, for our family members who are just seeing your face for the first time, please tell them who you are, what keeps you up at night, and how can they help you sleep better? How can they help further your purpose?
So who am I? I'm a wearer of many hats, a doer of many things, a liker of things, a follower of purpose, a liver of passion, which is a very poetic way of saying I basically just like my life and my days are filled up with things that I love doing. I live my passion. So I'm a full-time entrepreneur. I am a poet, I'm a writer, I'm a mentor, I'm a speaker. I love working with young people. They give me hope for the future that that we haven't done like irreparable damage. There is still hope. And yeah, you know, that's basically who I am and what I'm about. What keeps me up at night? I would agree with Bonati. It's purpose and you know how to live your purpose and staying on track. Rather, actually, what keeps me up at night is actually staying on track, which is something that the Bishop T.D. Jakes speaks a lot about. Staying on track despite the challenges, despite the peaks and valleys of life, but staying true to what you said you would do and staying on track with your purpose. And how can the lovely community and family of Africa Week help me live your purpose? Like you live your purpose and you live your passion. If everybody just did that, if everybody just focused on micro change, the macro impact that all of that added together would have would literally change the world in a sustainable and tangible fashion. That's something I'm very passionate about. Whenever I have an opportunity, I have a platform, I'm always trying to push people towards their passion, towards their purpose, and don't look at people who are living their passion and purpose as if they are heroes, as if it's a world you could never have for yourself, because it is. You just have to actually wake up in the morning and make a decision to live with passion and purpose. So yeah, it's a little bit about me.
To make a choice, to make a choice, to make a choice.
Yeah,
make
man.
that choice.
Intention.
You
Yes,
have that-
Dima. I mean, intention is everything, right? Nothing happens without intention. So intention is important. You have to wake up and live with intention.
Really, I mean, we really truly underestimate our power of manifestation, our power of pulling what it is we have in the back of our minds or in our mind's eye or right in our heart as a desire for us to project it into reality. We underestimate our ability to do that because, again, part of the conditioning and part of the things we need to unlearn is that we lack that power, is that we are not powerful enough to do that. And if we understood that that is at the core of why we are enslaved, this is at the core of why and how, because we were able to think of something and make it happen. These people came to the continent, saw things that they have never imagined seeing, saw things that were beyond their comprehension. So much so they had to convince themselves, no, these creatures cannot have made this if we couldn't come up or think of doing these things. You actually, and I played this video before. I don't know if it will allow me to do it here. I've played this video before. Let's see. I will pull the video off. But in the meantime, let us keep the conversation going as to the different ways our language. Yesterday we looked at all the ways we have similarities, not just in the language but in the structure of the language. And I'm very curious about your presentation, Hule, because it looked, I mean, just looking at some of the writing systems, the images that you had of the writing systems is very curious for me. And selfishly, obviously, I want to hear that presentation. But if you can show us, I don't know how long the presentation is, and if that.
Look, I can just do a little summary of some of the things.
I found that of particular interest, actually. I think when we were
Yeah.
so Puli and I had like a session, like when we first met and I was being introduced to him with Msaka and everyone. He actually shared his screen and he spelled Msaka's name in like using the indigenous African alphabet, if I'm not mistaken. I found that exceptionally interesting and mind blowing. So I'd actually love for him to share that if he can.
Okay. Well,
yeah. So if you can maybe share your screen, that actually would be awesome. Because even when I was telling people about the panel and I was telling them about the stuff, everybody was like, "What? There's an African indigenous alphabet? Like, what? Like, tell us more." So I think that's actually quite revolutionary. We need more of that, actually, more of that stuff to actually be shared with people.
So I don't know if you can see the screen now.
Yes, we can.
So this is the website which has the keyboard for the script, the alphabet on it. And if I go here, can you see that?
Yes.
So it tell me if you see what I'm typing here. So I'm going to type by clicking, and I'm going to write Unati. U-na-ti. Can you see that?
Oh, wow.
So there, the first symbol is the U, the second symbol is the Na, and the second symbol is the T. So you can see that it's a syllabic system. So now if I just share a different screen, 1 second. I'm going to just share my presentation screen.
When you get a chance, please share the link to the website.
Yes, I will. So here you can see, this is the presentation. It's called Ubuciko Bokuloba, which means ingenuity of writing. So it's the ingenuity of writing of the continent. And so you see here, these are just some of the writing systems. Can you see this map?
Yes.
So these are just some of the writing systems. This is just a sample. It's not all. It's a very small sample of all the writing systems in the continent. And I've included some Ajami systems. So Ajami obviously is a way of writing African language in Arabic with modifications of the Arabic Abjad, the writing system for Arabic and whatever other languages here. So we see those. And in the extreme south there, which I've put there at the top, and the question, the first question that I usually ask is, what do you notice about this map? It's a question for you guys.
Oh,
The south is at the top.
Yeah. So often what people usually say when I say, what do you notice about this map? They usually say is that it's upside down. Then I say to them, but why do you say it's upside down? Maybe it's the right way up. Because we here, we're in South Africa, we're in Azania, we're in the south. Why don't we put ourselves at the top? It's purely a convention to put the north at the top. You don't have to do that. The south stays the south regardless of which way you put it on the screen. So why do we put ourselves always at the bottom? Why don't we put ourselves at the top? All it is a change of focus. Why do we only consider using one writing system in this country specifically? Why do we only use the Latin alphabet? When in actual fact, we also have our own stuff. So this is the example of our own stuff, which is called Ispekwe Sohlamvu, or that's a Isunguni name for it. And then a Sesotho name for it is Timatsa Dinoko, which is a decolonial writing system for the Southern African region. And this is the way it looks. As you can see, it can be in a linear form in the small characters at the bottom, and then at the top in the large characters, it can be joined like that. So you can see it's a geometric form. And it can also have color symbolism, you see. So this is Isibhexi. So Hlamvu in Zulu, this is Shinta Naru Shami Pfaulo in Xitsonga, and this is Xitsonga, and this is Lutofu Nderaru Lwami Bvumo in Chivenda language. And then here is a little text so that you can see how it looks when it's written. And it says, Umfo ufundiswe ukuba ezakowabo inkosi zinto ezinobuqokolo akholwe yilonto. Afundiswe ukuba lamadoda akowabo makhulu zinto ezibayo, amasela, amakhwala, amaxoki akholwe yilonto. Angaqondi ukuba ngokwenze njalo okho kulahla yena ukuba alahle oyise nenkosi zakhe. I don't know, maybe if I can put Nachi on the spot and just offer a translation for people, it would be more for an exercise.
Oh wow.
Or something that you get from that text. So to engage with the text for someone who can understand it.
Man has learned that
It's okay. I just a comment on that text. Anyway, the text is by S.C.K. Mkhai, and it was written in a newspaper called Mthetheli Wabantu in 1927. And Mkhai was a famous author of Southern Africa, and maybe the most prolific author in South Africa. But he made the political choice never to write in English. He only wrote in his Xhosa, even though he was highly educated in English as well, and he was a good orator in English. He only ever wrote in his Xhosa language. So basically. I'm sorry when I put you on the spot. Like I have to translate. I just wanted you to comment on the text. I beg your pardon. But so it's a statement about people are taught that all of their own people, like great people like Mkhai, are certain low things. Like he says, amasela, like thieves, amagwala, cowards, amaxoki, liars, and believes those things. But as soon as you do that and start calling even people you don't necessarily like that are from your background, once you do that, you're losing yourself. That's what it says. So in doing this thing of maligning your own things, even if those things sometimes are you don't like them, but in maligning them, in putting them down, you lose yourself by losing your. Here it says it in a masculine way, but it could also be said in a feminine way. Or you say your fathers in Nenkosake and your chiefs, your kings. But another very important author here is K.P.D. Mapalla, who writes in Sesotho, and here he wrote an extract of a poem which says, "Mahlo aga tutubuluha o le koletsela le fifing le letho fatshe lena ha se la difofu le kgantsha sekgukgu ho tswe di bana," which means my eyes open up. Here's the translation. They survey the path in the black darkness. This world is not for the blind. It shows secrets. It zigzags. So the zigzag pattern as well is an important theme, as you can see in this writing system. And this is some of the work that I've done with the writing system. This was on an album by Dumama and Keshu, which is a South African and North African collaboration. And they stay in Germany at the moment. And this was one of their songs, which is about there's a song, maybe some will be familiar with the song, "We see we magam shenge, we see we magam shenge, some cross magam shenge." So it's a kid's song like this, and she's talking about the burden of a woman, burden of a mother. And so we've written the text in this form where it's the shape of this mother walking, a walking mother, and about the walking mother. So it's about this thing of forced migration and these kind of things, and the fact that we have to keep on walking to maintain this, to maintain ourselves in a way. So in the writing system itself, it can have these two different formats, how it can be written. And it has been used in many different artworks. Here is a sculpture by Sandile Khatebi with the writing system. So there's words written in there, you see. And here's some jewelry. This is written moho. Moho means together. So here is that was on my t-shirt yesterday, which is written Umuntu ngumuntu ngabantu. And here's another text by Mkhai. right? And what I want you to see is the symmetrical nature of this text, where is in comparison with the text on the right, which is the Latin alphabet. You see the lines are uneven, but on the left, it is the Isbeka writing system, where the lines are even because the poetry is even. It's very metrical. It's very well worded, where it's a very beautiful wording, such that the musical structure of it is well measured. So it says, Lala njalo gembambushe, ndunenkule ngulontrushe, amabhongo wafezile, bongo bundu buqibile. So that's a very famous a little poem that Mkai explains a historical text with. So basically, the system works like this: one symbol is one syllable in the language, which is very common in the continent, actually. In the continent, all these writing systems, for example, work like that. So Ge'ez Fidel, which is the Ethiopian writing system, and also used in Eritrea and that region, that is very ancient writing system. That is one syllable is one character. Then Vai syllabary, they're number 13 in West Africa. That is used for the Vai language in Sierra Leone and Liberia. That is one syllable is one character. Then Mandombe in Congo is very important. Mandombe is a university called Mandombe University, which is in Angola, in Luanda. That a good friend of mine is now enrolled in that course, but he's in France, remember. So it's another thing of the diaspora. So we have a person who grew up in France, he's in Lille, but he's enrolled in this university for learning this indigenous African script. And this is a way of him connecting with that core of himself that he believes and feels in a spiritual sense as well. It is also very important, the spiritual sense as well as the political. And then Mwangwego, which is in Malawi, number 3, and then Isbeka Sohlamvu in the extreme south. That's our one in this region. And so I usually go through, I'm just going to skip through this so as not to take time, but I go through the different types of writing systems in the world. And alphabetic is the one that we usually know. And I showed you this yesterday, that the Medu Nature, which Tristan studies, is the origin of the Latin alphabet. Actually, the Latin alphabet that we use now, for most countries in the world, use the Latin alphabet, and it is actually originating in the so-called ancient Egyptian or Kemetic script. But another alphabet is the West African alphabet, which is Nko syllabary, Nko alphabet, and it's from right to left. And it's a very successful alphabet. You can study it even at Harvard University. There's a course in Nko. There's many things in Nko. The works of Aristotle are translated. All Mande and Mandinka history is in Nko written. Microwave manuals, cell phone manuals, WhatsApp is available, Facebook, all kind of technology is available in Nko. And there's the National Sports Stadium in Mali, which is written in Nko. Remember that this is an alternative script, an indigenous alternative to the colonial education system. But it has a pride of place there in Mali at the Feriba Modibo Keita. So you can see there from right to left, Feriba Modibo Keita written. And here, my friends on Facebook, you see they're using the writing system. And myself on Facebook, my name is written in Nko. But then Medu Nature itself, for example, is what we call is a writing system that combines many things. And one of the combinations is the logographic system, which is one word is one syllable, and one word is one syllable. I mean, one word is one symbol, and one word is one symbol is the Chinese system. But also in Nigeria, in the region of the Cross River in Nigeria, we have in CBD, and CBD is a very famous system used by societies that also travel in the diaspora to Cuba and to South America and to the Caribbean. We have the tradition of this writing system from the region of what is now Nigeria, Cameroon, all the way there. So this is a natural diasporic element that happens as a consequence of the chattel slave system, but that where some core of African cultural technology is maintained. And this is also one symbol is one word. So here we have Igbo dictionary with one symbol is one word. So we see there every symbol written. And also in the film Black Panther, they do use it there. You can see it written there on the pillars. And it makes sense because this system was actually devised by a certain secret society called the Leopard or Epe Society. Epe in South Africa would say Ingwe, which is a big cat or a leopard or a panther. So it makes sense that they used it for this thing. And then finally, we have this in Ghana. We know that we have Adinkra symbols, and Adinkra symbols in what is today Ghana. They tell us a proverb, you know. So you see, here's the proverb. You can see futum funafu denchem funafu. Someone who speaks Twi or a language of that region will adjust my pronunciation. But you see, it is about they share one stomach, and yet they fight for getting food. You see, it is the Siamese crocodiles. In other words, a crocodile that has the same, two crocodiles having the same stomach. You know, this is about it's like an anti-tribalist dictum to say, you know, you have the same stomach. You could say it in this terms. You are Africans. Why are you fighting amongst each other when you are eating in the same stomach? So this is a call for unity, and so it's a proverb saying that. So you see, the one symbol tells a whole proverb. It tells a whole thing like that, and it's very common. This is in Jamestown, in Accra, where you see the Jenyame symbol there on the wall. Very common in the whole of Ghana. There's the Jenyame symbol, and then in also Southern Africa we have our ancient symbols, and this is from Credo Mutwa, Vusamazulu Credo Mutwa's book Indaba My Children, where the symbols are listed, and these are used by Izinyanga or Izangoma, Izanusi, Amatrecha. These are the keepers, the diviners and traditional healers. These are the people that was sources of the indigenous cultural technologies and the connections to the spiritual world and the connections to the natural world in terms of scientific information and all of this kind of thing. This is where writing originates. Usually it originates, people who are the keepers of knowledge, because writing is a way of consolidating knowledge. And here we have the translations or the meanings of each of these things. It's written there at the symbol at the top. Then there is Zulu meaning, then the Chishona meaning. So Chishona is the largest language group in Zimbabwe today, and then an English translation of it, right? And these symbols in Southern Africa have been used on walls. And remember that house building in this part of the world is something that is the province of women. Women are the house builders. The home is a female symbol, and women are the builders of houses. You know, in a Western context, you know, building sounds like a masculine pursuit, but in an African context, in many cases, building is a feminine pursuit, and this is the way of expressing particular messages through these designs. These designs are not just decorative; they have meaning. And they also are quite mathematically advanced and have been studied around the world as a particular type of mathematical principle called rotational symmetry. And that is, as many treatises on mathematics study Sesotho symbolic art. And there's some examples of different symbolic art, and I won't tell you the meanings of each to save time, but we are very familiar with Gogo Esther Mahlangu of the Nzunza and Manala and Ndebele chieftaincies, and she is a very famous artist who is globally famous now for expressing this symbolic art, which is actually symbolic, as a powerful indigenous art form that is celebrated throughout the world. And I'll skip through the technicals of how the system of writing works, because I think that could be used for another day. I'll just conclude by saying that here is a works of design that I've done using the system, and this was on the death of Vusamazulu Mutwa and his son Sashona Isanusi. So the diviner descends. So it's when he passes away. But you know, in an African cosmological context, when one dies, it's a circle. You are passing underneath the water, as it were, and you are descending. And you are becoming an ancestor, and in that sense, it's a cycle of that. And the reason, some people ask, why do we need an African writing system if our Latin alphabet is okay? But the truth is that for our languages in this part of the world, in Southern Africa, the Latin alphabet is not appropriate. Actually, it doesn't represent the languages very well. It actually makes them take longer to read, because the system of grammar that is in our languages is actually what we call agglutinative, which means everything is stuck onto the verb. So if you write in a Latin alphabet, the word becomes very long and it actually takes much longer to read. So that's why it has been suggested, even by these eminent scholars of linguistics, that a writing system that is syllabic, one syllable is one symbol, is better. And we have that in this country. So why don't we use it? And these are the ways that we combine it with other facets of indigenous knowledge, like we relate the shapes to particular indigenous musical instruments like this. And also we have many artists that use it. So there's the keyboard that's used for word processing. There's some graffiti piece by a graffiti artist, Tokenism. And here is some of his other artworks, which are in a fine art space. There's some furniture where the poems and the stories that I said at the beginning are actually written on these items of furniture. As you can see here, they're actually written there. And then here's a flag where the system is written. Here is another typography piece that someone did. And here's some clothing that's from the Unknown Union, which one of the directors of Unknown Union is Yassine Bey. So this is Yassine Bey's one project, and the writing system has been used there, as well as the great scholar called Barbaro Martinez Ruiz, who's from Cuba, but is a great scholar of Kikongo graphic systems. So he is a great diaspora scholar also. I'll mention him again, Barbaro Martinez Ruiz. And that is a very important person to understand graphic systems of the Central African region. And even on the nails, you can have the writing system, right? And here's more clothing, and Japanese and the Uzbek system together there. And here's a whole newspaper article written in the writing system, published at a UCT newspaper. And this is an article in the same newspaper about the system. And then here's a website where you can find information about it. Another website that is featured, and you can see it's written in Chinese there. So the rest of the world is paying attention, you see. And here is a Japanese explanation of the system. So really in Japan, even they're paying attention to the African writing system. It's listed in the world's writing systems, for example. And here's a microwave diagram using it. And here's some sculptural work again. This is more artists. This is an exhibition that we did 2 years ago or 3 years ago, can't remember, where artists were given African writing systems as a stimulus for creating artworks. So it produced a lot of interesting work, like this very great work by Snalo Ngaba, and which is about the cattle killing. And you can know about the story of Nongqawuse. It's a very important story, seminal in South African history, and about Nongqawuse. And so there we have on the cattle's heads written Safa. So people killed their cattle on purpose because she had a prophecy that if they did that, then the colonizers would be swept into the sea. So this is a very grave point in the history of this country, and a turning point. And here's some Tsotsitaal. So this is like Tsotsitaal, which is what we might understand as street language, but it's a love letter there, Nyak Verstaan. And then here's different artworks also using the different writing systems. And that was a short summary of this presentation, and that is thank you very much. In Spekers Sohlamvu. And this slide I showed yesterday, which is the text from Thomas Mofolo, which is a very great artist. And I say artist because he's a writer, but really very artistic in the way he constructed a narrative. And so here we are. I'm saying a person, not just a person in their physical manifestation or their ability to speak, but a person in speech and in action, a person in all facets. And he ends by saying a person in success and failure, and a person in abundance and scarcity. To be a person is something that you have to act to do, and something that other people act upon you to do. And I think this is the way that for myself and for all those around me who concern themselves with decolonial action, this is the thing. We are making ourselves people by celebrating and promoting that which has been maligned by the systems of power. Thank you very much.
Powerful. Wow. So I mean, why aren't we seeing more of this stuff? I hope you guys can hear me. I tried to reconnect, but why aren't we seeing more of this stuff in our like in mainstream in Africa? It's interesting that we see that you're saying it's traveled around the world and it's in Japan they're sharing this, they're studying it. I mean, I will be open about my ignorance. This was the first time I actually got to learn and experience this stuff. Like, so I feel like my mind is blown. So my question is, why aren't we seeing more of this stuff? Particularly in post-colonial South Africa, post-colonial Africa. Why is it so difficult for us to actually engage with the platform and media that it needs?
You see, I think the thing is that these things have always been there, and they continue to be there. But they are not in our realm of attention because they are not placed there, especially by anyone in control of media, anyone in control of representation through governmental program or these kind of things. They are not, by all of the structures of power, placed into public view. These things are always something you have to now search for. But it's not like they haven't been there. They have been there. We just have not had them presented to us on a plate. It's something that you have to find. That is why I appreciate those three, I think it's 3 R's or something that Dima was saying. And one of those things is research. And the other one is reclaim. You know, in order to reclaim, you cannot just reclaim from nowhere, from your poor understanding of things. You have to reclaim through research. You have to understand exactly deeper things that are not presented to you on a plate. You have to go into the depth of this thing and reclaim it from in the Adinkra system. There's a symbol called Sankofa, and there's even a famous movie called Sankofa. Everyone knows this phrase Sankofa. That word, it means return and get it. You have to go and get it. It's not going to be presented to you. That's the point about these things are there. You can find them,
Yeah.
but you have to look for them, unfortunately, because they have been purposefully suppressed for political reasons over the centuries. And it's only now that we have to like grow them out. There's a fertile soil that can grow so many things, but we have to tend to that soil. We cannot just leave it. So that's why I would say that.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I think Dima, when we're done with this, just before we Tristan has a chance, I think when we're done, Bule, if you can share, maybe we can share some links for the community. Like, so if you have like links that like where people can Google or like find some of this stuff, I think that'd be very helpful for us just to share with people in terms of if you are looking for more and you actually want to research, so you can rediscover and reclaim. This is where you can follow up on your own. So I think, yeah, but thanks for that. I think Tristan had wanted to add some.
Yeah, I'm sure Tristan has a lot to say about this.
Hello everyone. So I can be heard, right? No lag this time. Okay, good. Was my introduction heard when there was a lag earlier? I was just curious. Okay, good. Okay. All right. So, but to the question you raised, Malele, why you wouldn't know this? It's a similar experience we have in the diaspora when it comes to learning about our African connections. I would just say it comes down to 2 things. One, if you have an education system that is designed by your colonizers, be it the Arabs, the French, the British, and they are funding said schooling system, because I distinguish schooling from education. I think those are 2 different things. I've learned to make that distinction. It's not something I woke up doing, but if you have a system of schooling that's designed by your colonizers, the point is to suppress you and to socialize you into an assimilationist mentality. So yeah, sure, it's okay if people in Japan are studying African writing systems. They're not the actual people, because for them, not to be negative, but it's not going to go beyond an academic exercise. But if Black people are learning our own languages, you know, we know what happens. We get the revolution in Haiti. Those are the type of things that happen, right? That's why African spiritual practices have to be demonized, right? That's why we have to be, specifically Black people, have to be stopped from studying our languages because of the political implications. Because what you know about yourself affects what you do for yourself, right? and it gets us off of that psychological sense of dependence, or that white and Arab validation syndrome. And I think the people who make these systems are very aware of that. That's why they'd much rather people in Japan studying the indigenous African writing systems, or people in Europe studying Caribbean languages, as opposed to, making them official. I think that has a lot to do with it. There's a political point, basically, is what I want to say.
Absolutely. Thank you for making that point and for pushing it home, Tristan. And again, it goes back, this is exactly what I was saying about the Nubian language. We are not allowed to learn it in school. Mind you, the schools that we speak of are schools that the community built because the government isn't interested in building schools in Nubian villages. So even our schools that are built by us, that are funded by us, the teachers in the schools are our family members, because no one's going to go from the capital all the way to the village to teach the kids. They are taught by family members who are looking for work, and this is where they go. But for the school to be certified by the government, it cannot have the Nubian language in the curriculum, which is why you have an entire generation now growing not knowing that our language is actually written. So when I say I'm here to convert my family home into a community heritage center, so that I can convert 2 of the rooms to have one of them be a classroom to teach the language, to teach the written and language, the written and spoken language, they look at me like, what do you mean written? And so I would then pull it on my phone, because that's the only place I had one Nubian word written with the script, because I had someone do it for me, because I didn't at the time have the keyboard. When I show it to them, they're mind blown, because it's just like, oh, you can, but this is our language. So, yeah, this is our language. You want to learn how to write it. And so for 2 weeks after, I had the teachers in the school, who are also my aunts and my cousins, because that's the village, say, what have you done to these kids? They're coming to class, and the only thing they're asking about is when they're going to start learning to write Nubian. And now the kids are correcting them to tell them, don't call it Rutana, it's a language. And it's provoking the parents into thinking another system. And it's also like, well, we're not allowed to teach it. Like, yeah, you're not allowed to teach it while school is in session, but you have 3 months for which the school is on break. Why aren't you utilizing that time to teach the language? Your school finishes at 3 p.m. You have the rest of the day for these kids to basically be running around. Why isn't it dedicated on a rotational manner to, after school, teach that language? The government won't tell you anything. The government won't know, because the government doesn't care. They're not going to send someone here to check. I feel, again, it has to go back into a community-led effort. This has to be something that we need to do, because as you so rightly said, again, this is part of the war. This is part of the fight, the warfare against this language. Part of the aggression, the continued aggression against us as a people, is to avoid that connection from happening, because again, it would mean unlocking so many more secrets that are written in the wall that we don't even know about. And I just want to say a few points from your presentation, which were, by the way, so mind-blowing. It was just one thing after the other. I don't even know where to start. I'm so very grateful for the work you're doing, Puleb. The first connection it made to me, which, like, in my mind, I was just like, from how you had Africa, and I'm going to admit, the first thing that came to mind was Upside Down, in terms of the language, because the first language I learned was the English language. And so yes, and I'm still unlearning. I'm saying this, and I have no shame in saying that, because, well, I've already come to admit that I didn't know who Malcolm X or Nkrumah were until I started university in the United States. It took a lot to admit that. Mind you, I grew up in Egypt, which is now the chair of the African Union. At that point was the chair of the African Union, and nowhere in the curriculum is any of our African leaders. But I'll digress. That made such a connection for me, how you had that, because Nubia, which is, if you put Africa north up, south down, the Nubian part of Egypt is technically South Egypt, but it's called Upper Egypt. Like in the directions, if you're on the highway, if you're going from Cairo to there, it says Upper Egypt. And all my life, I am wondering, why is it called Upper Egypt if it's in the south of the country? But it's called Upper Egypt. And when you did that, I was like, is that what it is? That's what it is. I just.
What I would assume, if I can just jump in there, what I would assume is that it's called Upper Egypt because the river runs from a high elevation to a low elevation.
Yeah.
So we're thinking in this convention of the north is the top, and we're thinking all of this like geopolitical terms that are so entrenched with the colonial convention that we stop like looking at how things actually are, which is like the land is higher. That's why it's called upper. It's a simple concept.
It's amazing, again, to go into the depth and again, this is nothing but the emphasis of the significance and the power of wording and the power of language, right? To say that north is top and south is bottom in the context of what you see and what you hear and what impact that leaves in the subconscious that you keep carrying with you everywhere. I want to say it's insane. It's not insane, but actually it is insane. It's insane that we are, first of all, I'm very grateful that we are now having these conversations. And I know that these conversations have been happening, but they're happening in silo. And it's so important to now bring these conversations together in a space where enough of us are able to take it and take it back. And I fully support what Momalele is saying about having this list of resources of where people can go to learn about these languages. Ultimately, it would be a dream to take the conversation we were having. We had a session called Dignity, the case for Afrocentric archaeology, and the need for us to revisit our heritage, our ancient heritage, our ancient languages from an Afrocentric lens. In doing that, it would also require us to revisit our ancient and teach our ancient languages. And this was something that we did with, or at least touched on with Nubia Fest last week. We had a full week of all things Nubia, which included the conversation. And I'll tell you that the panel that was watched and shared the most on all platforms was actually a panel on Nubian proverbs and the history, tracking this history of what these proverbs meant. And it's a conversation between an elder, a Nubian elder, and a German linguist who's dedicated his life to getting two of the Nubian languages, or maybe dialects. I'm still navigating the Kenzi and the Dangolawi and the Halfawi. That conversation got watched more than 9,000 times, and it got shared more than 200 times, because it traced back how some English and German and Western proverbs track back all the way to the Nubian language, from just stubbornness to everyday wisdom to it's all tracking back to the Nubian language. There is the need for that. I'm wondering if, again, from a solution-based perspective, we might be able to look, and I'm hoping this is something we can do here on the platform at Africa Week 2020, look for our people who might be willing to teach us, to hold some free classes. And even if they're not free for, for a charge, I would prefer it to be free. I try to do the things that we do for our people for free, just so that money is not the excuse for not accessing this knowledge. And I know we have enough of our people who are passionate for this, who can record at least the classes in a sequence that we might be able to offer here to the family. Is this something you know of, any effort in your circles that are being done? I know I would like to hold definitely Nubian classes here for anyone to learn. But if you know of anyone who might be interested in teaching this, to give us just the basics, so that we may even know the symbols, the characters, what they mean, and how we can begin to use them. Because yes, as you said, research, and the middle one is rediscover. Because the more we research, the more we rediscover, the more we are able and we have a grasp to reclaim. So please, open discussion here. If you know of anyone who works on this, who might be able or might be interested to teach us or hold some classes, or if you know of any other initiatives that are community-based, that are accessible for our youth specifically, to begin engaging in. Anyone?
One thing I can say is that there is a university online called Mandombe University, where you learn. You see, I was talking to that friend of mine who I was mentioning, who is in France, in Lille, and he was explaining that he's been enrolled in university since June, and they've done now 21 classes about the Mandombe writing system, which is a Congolese writing system for writing Kikongo and whatever, but it can write anything, like any writing system. But he was saying that they're still on the aspect of the philosophical grounding. And I think that's a very important thing, is that more than learning cultural aspects that are material or that are to do with functional life, there is the core of like a system of understanding the cosmos, a cosmology, a system of what do we interpret to exist in the universe. Those are systems that we have to, changing the conventions is not only changing the map, it's changing like what do we consider to exist. There are certain traditions of thought of what exists in the world and how is the world created, that we have to now reassess. Are we using them? Are we just usually defaulting to like an ancient Greek thing? Usually we just default to an ancient Greek thing. Like if we talk about drama and we say tragedy is a word that actually means the goat song, and it's in Greek Dorian mythology, where there is a play where you have the singer is the faun, is the goat who sings the tragic monologue. And so we interpret tragedy as a concept in general in drama in terms of a Greek system of mythology. But we have our own systems of mythology. We could use those, but for some reason we do not. So I will just share on the screen now the Mandombe University. That is a very good, and it's, let me check here. I don't know if you can see that. Yes? Can you see that? I can't hear anyone and I can't see you, so I can't. So just open your mic. Okay, so here's Mandombe University. Yeah. So the only thing is that these courses are given in Portuguese because the university is in Luanda or in French, you see, and I'm sure that they will expand. And obviously it's for Kikongo language and for languages of that region of Congo. And you can see here that for 5,500 kwanza, which is very cheap. I don't know how much in dollars or in euros that is, but in rands it's about 150 rands. And you can start a beginner course, Mandombe Nivel Iniciante, and that one is teaching the basics of Mandombe, and it starts with the philosophical grounding of Mandombe as a writing system. indigenous writing system. And you can see here on the right where it says receba o seu nome escrito em Mandombe, contribua. There's Carolina Martinho, and you see her name, Carolina Martinho, written there in Mandombe above. So you can see Mandombe is very beautiful looking writing system. It uses these recurring forms, and it is associated with a particular movement in Nkamba, which is in Congo, in RDC, in Democratic Republic of Congo, where Nkamba is the center of essentially what my friend was saying to me today. These people are trying to create a new world order. That's the truth of the matter from an African perspective. And essentially that's what we're talking about, is creating a new world order from an African perspective. So I think that is one resource that you can start to think. But it is one's own work to do those things as well. But that is one, just as one aspect. There's an actual university online that you can actually attend now.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Absolutely, it's something that we do need to take on personally. And Unathi, please feel free to chime in. Tristan as well, if you know of any initiatives, if you know of any ways that we can encourage or entice specifically our young family members to engage with these different languages in a way, whether it's on an academic front or just on a social and cultural revitalization effort on a community based. Again, do let us know. Let's see, what do we have here?
Oh, can I?
Thank you. Yes.
I was actually I actually wanted to ask a question because when you were speaking, and I don't know if anybody else has anything to add anything. But I actually was going to ask about the importance of a language being written in order to protect, to preserve, but also to progress it. How important is the written aspect of a language? Because when you were talking about showing the youngsters the written language of Nubian, and how surprised they were to see that. And I've always sort of wondered what is the relationship between written and spoken language in terms of protecting, preserving, but also moving a language forward.
Well, you hear the cliche, don't you? And I say cliche because it's said in so many ways and taken out of context of what it actually means. Then also shifting it, but seeing is believing. Seeing this language in a way to that you can see this isn't just something that the wind will take and blow away. No, this is something that is written. This is something that people took time to carve into walls. So it's not just
up in the air.
It's not just up in the air. It's not something that can be erased because it is carved. Bringing that back in that way, in that context, to be able to, and this is why I shared actually this link for the Nubian typeface. It was by a good friend and colleague and really a serious fighter for this cause. And Tristan, I believe you're familiar with Vincent and his work. He's an Albanian linguist who literally I don't know how he ended up doing Nubian language. He mentioned it, but this has been his work's life, writing a grammar on the Nubian language. And he rejects any form of the script itself being, Coptic or Greek. He says we need to have something that identifies the language as an African language and have that script, which now we don't have. The one that is predominantly used are the Coptic letters or the Greek ones, which is what the language we had was. But the way he put it is, If you want to revitalize, if you want to instill the pride in this heritage, what better way to be able to have these kids connect this language to something that they see that has existed thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago? To be able to say what you are writing now is the same way it was written back then, before any skyscrapers, before any colonizer came into this land, before any attempt to delete or erase you as a people. Tristan, you have something to add, I am certain.
Okay, just my thoughts on the written question. So just a few things. I think the reason why writing is important, part of it is because in Eurocentric culture, we're told that you don't exist if you don't have writing, right? So that's the first part of the question, where we're all socialized in that kind of environment first and foremost. So that's why we think that way. But as we know, if we look at African antiquity, you've had societies that had literature and societies that were oral. And that leads me to my second point with African systems. The basis of African language, the very dichotomization between written and oral doesn't really exist, because the point is to express the power of the word. And I don't mean it in a mystical way, but I mean in a very holistic way, the power of the word, the power of manifesting the power of creative force. That creative force can come through writing, it can come through orally. If you think in a context of the African diaspora, this is why it's important to understand Caribbean languages and African American Ebonics as African languages. When you think of call and response, when I say make some, you say noise. So make some, and then y'all would say noise, right? Just, I'm going very old school with the United States side of things, but we see this a lot in African music in the diaspora and rap, in dancehall in Jamaica. We see this a lot, right? That aspect of communication. In Medu Neter, you can see that same function in some of the writing, that call and response function. Even though it's written, you can still see oral aspects of it. So it's not really a harsh division between oral and written. The two kind of go side and side in the case of the people of Kemet. So that's one of the reasons why I think the what we might know as the hieroglyphic script of Kemet is really important to look at. So I think it's not just so much focusing on writing, but what are we trying to do with writing? Even the way African people make words. So there is a African-American anthropologist from the early 20th century, Zora Neale Hurston, and she wrote a brief essay on Ebonics. Back then, it would have been called Negro Dialect, Black English, or whatever. But in the 1920s, I think this was published in the 1930s, 1934, I think, Characteristics of Negro Expression. That should tell you the dating of it. But she was an anthropologist, Zora Neale Hurston. One of the comments she made is that, commenting on how African Americans speak, is that the white man thinks in a written language and the Negro thinks in hieroglyphics. So what she was explaining is that when African people make words, there's a picture embedded in them already, right? So when we say certain things, like if I write a phrase, it's going to be slightly negative, but you'll have to work. You'll have to work with me on this one. In Jamaica, if we want to say somebody is miserable, right, we call them a screw face. Now, we know that the person can't have a face that resembles a screw, but what happens when you're screwing something? You ever use tools and you're screwing something, you kind of screw your face like, it's unpleasant. So it immediately communicates this idea of being unpleasant. So I could write that down. So even if I write it in a Latin script, a picture still comes through your mind. Am I making sense so far? In terms of that hieroglyphic dynamic? Or in the United States, one of their sayings, sometimes in some, I guess, I don't know if this is more East Coast United States, Dima might have heard this expression, If somebody is, you know, acting out of, you know, social norms, someone might say you're out of pocket, right? Why would you be out of a pocket? What does that signal? Why a pocket? Why? Because a pocket is containment, right? So containment is order, right? That can go back into Ma'at, right? The ancient Egyptian or Kemetic concept, ethical concept, political concept. Sometimes people underestimate the political meanings of certain things that people of Kemet talk about, which drives me bonkers. But, you know, it happens. But one of the things about Ma'at, they say speak Ma'at, do Ma'at. So they have iri Ma'at. So iri is the verb to make, to do, to act, sort of a creative function. So you have iri Ma'at. In an African American context, you would translate that as keeping it real. Right. That's the origin of keeping it real. It comes, actually, you can make that clear connection to the Medu Neter. Even in Jamaican, when we talk about different ways to exist, you know the phrase wagwan, right? What is happening? It's almost similar to Swahili when people talk about, wait, the phrase is going to escape me, one of the greens, but let me not embarrass myself, but maybe I'll remember it. I feel like it's hujambo. I feel like it's hujambo, but I might be wrong. But in Jamaican, we have wagwan. Guan functions the same way. If you ever see the scarab beetle of Kemet, everyone's familiar with the scarab beetle of Kemet. The beetle represents transformation and happening, because why? The dung beetle, when it's rolling up dung, it also, maggots grow out of the dung that it collects. So it's also collecting life. But also when a beetle grows, it goes through stages of metamorphosis, similar to like a butterfly. It goes from a caterpillar to a butterfly, similar to that. So wagwan is what is happening, what is becoming, what is put in its process of being, right? And in Swahili, I think a similar concept is like kuna, to have, right? How much years you have. That's one way of saying, I think, in some Caribbean languages, right? Because have, right, it's something of process. Another aspect, there's a Kemetic concept of wenen, which is symbolized by a desert hair and a ripple of water, sometimes two ripples of water. So there's wenen, and then there's wen. Because you have to kind of insert the vowels, because in the Kemetic language, they only write the consonants. So you have to, by convention, Egyptologists insert an E, but I'm thinking from the perspective, this is one of the things in my research, because in the Jamaican language, I probably use different vowels in between those, you know, but it's very arbitrary. But just for argument's sake, we have wenen. Wenen is understood by Egyptologists as to exist. But here's the thing. Remember what I just told you about Guan and Keper, right? African languages understand aspects of existence, right? Because existence is understood as divine itself. So now going back to the word wenen, which is a little different from Keper, it's about the essence of existence. And to exist is really to be present. In Jamaica, we have a phrase similar to that, dede, right? And that's connected to Igbo di, de in Akan tree. It's related to that. So for example, in tree, if I say, Midinde Tristan, my name is, or you could say the name of my presence is Tristan. But in Jamaican now, because Tree is one of the continental ancestors to Jamaican, in Jamaican now we say Medede long time. My present has been present for a long time. So you see already that hieroglyphic meaning, even if I wrote it in a Latin script, that hieroglyphic meaning would be communicated. Or to put it in a Ebonics context, if I say, in Jamaican, if I say, Wemde, in Ebonics, in African Americans, you'll say, where he at, or where she at, right? That at is about presence. Now, in English, you'd think, okay, it means where is he or she? But really what it means is, where is her presence, right? Because that's how being is understood. There's that process of being, keper, wagwan, wamtiu, right? Then there's that notion of presence by the concept of dede, where you at, and wenen. Does that make sense so far? So that's one of the ways, is understanding what is the cultural purpose of the language themselves. So when we're making scripts and such, so even Pule brought up Sankofa, right? In Jamaican, it was funny when I started doing this is my work. I'm saying this is why I say to understand African languages in a translation capacity, you have to deal with languages of the diaspora, because Sankofa, right? In Jamaican, we say this all the time. It's a verb chain. Run, go get it. Run back, go get it. So when I started doing my translation work, I realized, wait, this is something my father says to me all the time, because my father, he does renovation. So like home renovation. So sometimes I'm working with him and he'll ask me for something. He'll be like, Tristan, can you run, go get me the screwdriver? But you never make the connection, right, where that very construction comes from, right? That's why I think having revitalization of African languages has to be done with other African languages in the world. I think that's what's really important, because it's not that European languages are necessarily bad, but one, the colonial context which they're imposed on African people is the problem. But the second thing is, if you want to get to the profound spiritual concepts, that profound African deep thought, you're only going to get it through the way African people speak. And that also includes the nonverbal communication cues as well. And those are sort of my thoughts on that. So in terms of revitalization, I think a key part of it is engaging other African languages in that conversation. So I don't think it's just good enough to know Yoruba. I think it's good to know Twi alongside it, and Ais and Cleo alongside it, or the Haitian language, right? Because I try, this is why I stay away, and I mentioned it last discussion yesterday, why I stay away from Creole or dialect or even Pidgin, because it misses the linguistic creativity of the African people of the diaspora and their connection to the motherland. All right. And I think I've said a lot, so I hope that part is like clear what I was saying.
Perfect. We got you loud and clear. Actually, it reinforces like what you were saying. Like for me, it reinforced the inherent spirituality within African language. There's just such a spirituality. I mean, when you were talking about the fact that asking someone or where's she at or how's she doing, it's not just about asking the question and like the transactionality of that phrase. You're really talking to the spirits, like the presence of an individual. And I mean, I just love that. And the point you're making about translation as well, about how at the heart of, well, not necessarily at the heart, but an important aspect of revitalization, as well as the progression and preservation of our languages, is also to translate them, and so that we can bob and weave and sort of move, between the different languages. Nati, you've been really quiet. Is there anything you want to add?
No, I'm listening.
Are you digesting?
Yeah, but just to add on to that, that's also a way of decentralizing the colonial languages. I think Bula and I were talking yesterday, and I was saying that I'm trying to learn Kiswahili or Setswana through isiXhosa. And it's very different when you're learning another African language through another, as opposed to learning it through English or learning it through French or Portuguese, etc. So, yeah, I think part of sort of reclaiming and centering ourselves is to also, learn to use your whatever indigenous African language you speak to kind of connect yourself to other languages or other African languages.
And thank you, Nati, and absolutely. It's again going back to what we were saying yesterday about the power of the language and how insisting on revitalizing and speaking this language is just by the very fact that we are speaking this language that was so deliberately attempted to be erased is an act of resistance. Not only is it an act of resistance, it goes against everything that was attempted from the uprooting of the first ancestor of African soil. which is that's when it began our disassociation as a family. The again, why they say divide and conquer. You know, that's it's looked at differently. It's we divide, they conquer. The more we divide from who we are, the more we divide from our oneness, the more we step away from that oneness, the more they are able to conquer. And this is why I say we have been traumatized into survival mode. Because after the first ancestor was uprooted, then became a competition for survival. And this is why you see a lot of the projects or the initiatives or the attempts to bring us together ultimately reach a peak and it halts, because we have not yet collectively healed. So we have not collectively experienced any one thing as a people. Right now, as we exist, we have not collectively experienced anything but oppression. And even in that oppression, we are competing in that oppression. So we are thinking that one group is more oppressed than another. And that becomes the center of the argument. That becomes the heart of the issue, as opposed to realizing that we are all oppressed and we are all in this together. If there's injustice in one part of this family, then it by default floods back to all of us. That isn't in the psyche because we are not recognizing these similarities. The very fact that Tristan is saying our languages as African languages cannot be fully understood if we're not taking into account the diasporan language, because that adds an element of continuity that we on the continent might not even be aware of, because we're not engaging with these languages, because we are somehow succumbing or accepting a narrative of these language that they are not. And I have to admit, I was one of these people. I was one of the people who was like, oh, I didn't, I studied in the British system. I spoke the British language, and even when I came to the US, I was just like, oh, this isn't proper English. And then just like, all these things that you look at or that you try and have these to understand now that the extent of our oneness goes down to how we communicate, again, beyond just the words, down to what Msaka was saying, even the body language, even how we greet one another, even how we look at one another, even just the sound effects that are not actual words, the
That's very important. So I have to jump in. Sorry, dear. I have to jump in because because I'm a doctoral student and I've had the privilege of, the opportunity to teach classes as an instructor at Temple in the Africology department. And I always talk about language, as you could imagine, because I really try to address African ethnocentrism within different groups of African people, and I include the diaspora in that. And one of the examples I do, because sometimes when I have students of different racial backgrounds, I try to get us over we're all the same thing, but that there's difference and there's nothing wrong with that difference. And one of the examples is that expression, I know it as kiss teeth. Some people know it as sucking teeth. I said, only African people do that. Right. And, we go into theories about why it is. That's one of my icebreaker conversations, but that's very important because it's only African people. It's only Black people you hear that can really do that. I don't know if it has something to do with lips, or cheek structure, because it reminds me of what I was saying last interview when I was trying to take German and I couldn't really capture German sounds. I could understand German grammar very well. I could do all the technical stuff, but there's just something missing. And that's why I came to the conclusion. Some people would think I'm being down on myself, but it wasn't being down on myself. It's just, I understand language and culture to be like this. And I'm just like, I'm too African for German. It's just really that simple to me because of the pronunciation systems that I'm accustomed to. That's why, and we were talking about this earlier, me looking at, because I've been experimenting, peeking around at Kiswahili and just the very sounds. Even though Swahili is not one of the group of African people, the speakers of that language weren't necessarily those that came to Jamaica or came to the United States. They're part of, you know, a similar family with Akan and Yoruba in the Niger-Congo classification, I believe. The thing is, certain sounds are similar, like the NY sound, like how we say one nyam little something. Nyam is the word for food. In some African languages, it's the word for meat and such, or some type of food. In some languages, it's to eat, like in Wolof, it's to eat, right? But just those very sounds are similar. Like, for example, one of the things, because this happens a lot in the diaspora, oh, how am I African? I've never been to Africa, blah, 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 blah. It comes with you, right? So I said, okay, don't you notice how y'all in the States say duh, like duh man or demand, but usually say duh, like a DA as opposed to DHA. Listen to how African immigrants, especially those coming from West Africa, sound when speaking English. The TH isn't strong, it becomes a D. Right, because you're related. You can tell. Look, I mean, you could just look at aesthetics. I'm just talking about language for now, but hair is really, to me, the obvious one. But I know I'm just focused on language, but I would make the hair comparison because I always go to hair. Because no matter how assimilated an African person wants to be, that hair is not going to change. No matter how much you want to Beyonce weave it up, Beyonce weave it, no matter how much you want to cut and shave it down like Michael Jordan, that hair is not going to change. I don't care. It's not gonna change, right? It's different, right? And I think, but that's why I said, you know, your point though, but back to language, the kiss teeth, I think that's the kiss teeth, that's very important because that's only Black people do that. And that's an aspect of language other groups of people can't really communicate. And I think, yeah, I just thought that was a profound point. I'm sorry. I just love that point.
Yay! Yes, absolutely. And again, it's more of looking at the oneness at the heart of Africa Week 2020 is coming into that oneness, is stepping into this oneness, is realizing that each of us is holding a piece of the puzzle. We all know we have that piece of the puzzle. All the pieces are there. We're just put in some form of box, which we chose to stay. We are actively choosing to stay in this box. Whereas if we spread out, we're like, we're right here. Now let's see what each of us is bringing to the table and recognizing that whatever that piece looks like, it is an important piece of the puzzle. The puzzle is not complete without this piece. It shifts how we're doing things because somehow we stepped into this idea that if it's not the same, if we disagree, which is why I really appreciated towards the end of the conversation yesterday when Msaka was saying I'm waiting to see when we would disagree, you know, because if we're all agreeing on this, if we're all saying the same thing, if we're all, then there's a question mark here because we are not all the same person. We don't have the same experiences. And this notion that we need to all think the same, or we need to all follow the same thing, or we need to all be the same way. The only one thing we all need to be is true to ourselves. And what that means changes entirely from one person to another, from one point we are in the world to the other. And on that note, I thank you all for your time. I would like to see if you have any final comments or you know, take homes for the family who are either watching live or will be watching this later. What would you tell them about language? What tip would you give them to connect with the African, with any of our African languages, if they have, if they don't? Any last words for now until your return to the next reunion?
I'll go. I think I'm going to try and look, because I was like, after yesterday, I was still so into the vibe and everything, and I remember that Msaka had mentioned Nguki wa Thiong'o. And so after yesterday's session, I went and I just like did some research. So I was already starting the research, the R, one of your R's, Dima. So I was like researching and just listening to some of that stuff. And one thing that caught me, that I was watching a YouTube video, and I'm going to paraphrase and see if I can do it justice. But he was talking about this idea of, or this issue of embracing and taking over the colonizers or the oppressors' language and embracing it as your own. So for me, it would be embracing English as my own language, as the language that I'm going to, take a position in, as Msaka was saying yesterday, the language I'm going to take as my own and take a stance and position in the world, and losing my heritage, right? So losing the Tswana and the Sotho and the Pedi heritage that I have. And he was saying that even though the oppressor has technically left and you're no longer a colony, so to speak, you are still enslaved. If that is the way that you are engaging with language, you would still be enslaved because you've lost your heritage, you've lost your culture, you've lost your narrative. So you're still enslaved. And it's painful because now you're choosing to continue the enslavement. But if you, and then he went on to say, but if you embrace the language of the oppressor. So for me, if I embrace English, but still keeping true to my heritage and my culture, still speaking my language, writing in my language, creating in my language, but also, learning the languages of others and so forth, you are then empowered, and you are choosing to empower yourself. So I think for me, the key takeout is to choose empowerment. So to go back to, my to go back to our heritage, go back to our cultures and our languages, and not lose those as we learn other people's cultures and learn other languages, and we embrace, the other, so to speak. So that for me is like one of the key takeouts. The divide and conquer, I think it's come through today and yesterday, about how the divide and conquer sort of rhetoric and ideology. And I have a profound understanding of it now, because it wasn't just about dividing us as a people in terms of you or of this culture or of that ethnic group and you were there, but it was also dividing us from ourselves, from our spirituality, from our presence, Tristan, from our heritage. So I have a new understanding of that ideology, actually, just how far it goes. And yeah, I just want to thank you guys for the wisdom that you guys have dropped and the time that you have made. For those of you who have woken up at an ungodly hour, thanks. Thanks to you guys as well. Sure, that's me. Like I said yesterday, and I'll close with that today, this has been a very spiritual experience for me. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Who else?
I would say, firstly, do not deprive your children of their languages. And it's not even about, like, how do I put this? It's not even about access to education or whatever else. There's ways of moving about socially and culturally that you do need those languages to be able to navigate. And at some point, your kids may resent you, and they might come to you and say, but why didn't you teach me this language? Why do I know only English? Because now I can't interact with my cousins, I can't interact, or I'm struggling to interact with other people because there's this part of me that I don't have. So that's one thing I was going to mention. And the other thing is that we also need to shift from this, well, what I call like mono mentality, where it's like, like the Highlander, there can only be one. No, there can't only be one. It's not, do you know what I mean? So it's not English or Xhosa, it's not English or Kiswahili. It can be both, it can be three of them, it can be four of them, etc. So moving away from this one language, one nation model that we're still trying to deal with would make a huge difference, in my opinion. Yeah, I think that's it for me.
Yes, thank you. Ule?
I'm just thinking, we never did, and I know we're sort of wrapping up, and maybe I'm being naughty here, but we never, because remember yesterday, Unati actually asked the question, or she posed a thought about identities and the moving, and the ease of movement between the two. I don't know if we actually got her perspective, because everybody else had an answer yesterday, but I don't know if we actually had an opportunity to get her perspective whilst I was on Facebook earlier on. So I'm just thinking maybe she wants to sort of share her her perspective on that question, on that thought that she had posed yesterday.
Yes.
And then we can definitely wrap up.
No, I'm fine. I just know that they both have places to go. Pule and Unati both have places to go for. So I just
yes.
To
like I said, maybe I'm being naughty.
It's fine. They can wait. I was just approaching it from the logic of, I mean, I don't remember who was saying what, but that the importance, or that language reflects identity. I don't know who said that or if that was a topic. So I was coming from that and saying, okay, if your home languages or language are reflect your identity, then by that logic, would speaking or understanding many languages result in you having, so to speak, many identities? And then do you just kind of move through each of those depending on what situation you're in or who you're with, what the context is? So that was just me thinking out loud. So that's what I meant when I was asking that question.
What is your answer to that question, Unati?
Nice one, Pule.
I mean, I wouldn't say it's having identities. I would say it's like a part of who you are. So it's not like a separate entity. It's just different versions of you, if you will. I don't know if I'm making sense. So I look at it like that. Yeah, or it's like you having like a bag of colors, and then, you know, when I go to the shops, I'm yellow. When I'm with my family, I'm blue. When, you know, if I'm listening to music, I'm green. But those are all still a part of me. Yeah, that's my answer.
I think sometimes that's an important way of thinking about it, because sometimes certain parts of us are suppressed, either by ourselves or by other people. And those parts of us that are suppressed, that's also a function of like self-denial, you know, because you have this thing of yourself, but you're suppressing it. So it's also the thing of like what everyone is saying, going back to certain aspects of culture and language that you don't go forward with, you don't put forward, you don't allow yourself to use that. Like, it's, for example, like angisafuna ukukhuluma isilungu kahle kahle mangimala khona la uyabona ukuthi that's the kind of aspect. It's like sometimes you just feel like I don't want to operate in this identity or aspect of identity where I'm forced to speak English all the time. Why? It's boring, it's tiring to have to be one thing because the rules of the system are saying you have to do this thing in this context. And just don't. Like, sometimes you can, you know, sometimes there's always there is the leap to say, like, I once had a friend who at some point he would just never speak English to people. Like, some guys would come through with like this American slang and whatever. He'd be, yo man, where do we go to the can you hit us up with the details of, and he would be like, and he would always be like that regardless. He was like obstinate about that. And he did it for his own enjoyment. But at some point, I thought, there's a young kid who's doing this thing, and he's consciously doing this thing. And he's playing with the thing of like, I'm supposed to play this part of my identity here. I'm going to play some other part of my identity. I'm not going to follow this rule and do it like this. It's just changing the convention again, I think. I don't.
This is, for me, it's so true, and it's ringing so loudly now. I had an idea of what you meant when I saw the comment yesterday and how the discussion was going. But now with the color analogy that you made, it's so real, and it re-emphasizes two things for me personally. It re-emphasizes that language is not just the words we hear. Because in you saying, you know, I have an identity when I'm like I'm in a certain state, in a certain presence, when I'm with family, when I'm with friends, when I'm listening to music, when I'm by myself, when I'm reading, when I'm this, you know, I'm all these different beings, I'm all these different presences, I'm all these different states. And it going back to, again, what Tristan and Momalele were saying about the, you know, the spirituality, or the spiritual aspect of the language, having these different identities through speaking these different languages, through embracing or taking position in these different cases. Yeah, in that case, yes, I would say, yeah, we should be able to flow in and out of them in ease. And it makes sense now to me. So thank you. That color analogy really drove it home for me. Tristan, do you have anything to add? Because we have the unicorn panel waiting to start on the on the next one.
Okay.
What's the Africa you see coming?
Can I be heard?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, I had to switch. I've had some device issues. Just in response to a question, I think I don't think language and identity are always connected, but they can be. So I think for us, our identity is with our ancestors. And from that identity, that determines which language is ours culturally. So if, like me, my ancestors are Jamaican and my ancestors beyond that are Africans of, you know, that West and West Central African region, those would be languages that are ancestral to me. So therefore, those are what should be important to my identity. Me speaking English does not make me a British person or a British identity. It just means the person, the colonizer that I have to deal with in the social context that I navigate. So our identity as African people, also for European people and Asian people, we should be identified by our ancestors. I think that's really the key, because it's our ancestors that can do locks, braids, and China bumps, some know as Bantu knots. We obviously don't have the same ancestors as Europeans or Asians, and they have their own ancestors. So Black people, we have to understand we are our ancestors. Nobody else. We're not British or Canadian or American or those things. We are simply African, right? And I think that's extremely important for us to get in our heads, a Pan-African sense of being, seeing the oneness and the many within Africanity. I think that's extremely important. And I think language bores it out. So that's what I would say to that. And I think the very conversation we're having is this is just a beautiful conversation. I think it bores that point out too. You cannot run away from who you are. A dog is a dog no matter where the dog is.
Yes, thank you. I really appreciate this conversation. And Momalele, I really appreciate you and give thanks to you starting this conversation with proposing that panel. We definitely need to have more of these. I thank each of you for what you've brought to the family, from your knowledge and your passion for our languages. Hule, thank you for these websites. I hope people will visit them and be able to follow your work and catch up again. Thank you for that presentation. We now know to reach back out to you to get into the more in-depth, because I had so many questions about whether the colors change, the vowels change the sound, change the meaning of the word, and I'm sure they can. Yes, please share. As you do that, I'm going to step off because I need to get the unicorns live, but I'm going to unmute my camera, but please go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to share, because earlier we were talking about kids and not making your kids at a disadvantage by not that they might resent in life by not giving them the cultural aspects that they might want, you know. And my mother passed away earlier this year in July, and her life's work was this project called African Storybook. An African Storybook. I'll share the screen. I don't know if it's possible to share the screen now that Dima's off, but Dima, if you can let me share the screen here. Is it visible? Can somebody switch on the mic and tell me if it's visible?
Okay, I think it's coming up now.
Eh?
Yes.
Yes. So this is a website called africanstorybook.org, and you can see this is an open access, fully editable, versionable stories in all languages of the continent. You see, so here we have the same story, and it's got the Zulu version and the Kiswahili version. It's also for people who are also familiarizing themselves with the basics of various languages. If you can see here, these are like different language forms under different names that are listed, you see. So from Chishona, Chitumbuka, Dholuo, Efik, you see, Fulfulde, Chibemba, Igbo, Zulu, Kirundi, Creole, Lugwere, Lumasaba, Mumuye, Olunyala. You know, this is a vast resource, and it's especially for kids. You see, but actually anyone, but for family to centralize African literacy in an African idiom and in varied African idioms. So I just wanted to share that as another resource. And also it's my mother's legacy, and I do see myself, you know, talking about ancestors and everything. I do see myself as responsible for the legacy of my parents and those people that did good things before, you know, and so yeah, I just wanted to share that specific website as a good resource for people. Thank you very much. Ngiyabonga, thank you.
No, thanks for sharing that. I'm actually checking it out right now. It looks like a really cool resource. We'll definitely share it as well with the family. But I think we're Dima. Can you usher us off? Thanks. Okay, fantastic. Thanks for sharing the link. But thank you very much, guys. This has been not guys, because Dima's going to come at me again. But thank you very much, people, beautiful people, my brothers and sisters. This has been really amazing. Like I said, a very, very, very spiritual experience for myself, and I'm sure a lot of the people, like after yesterday's session, I had so many people messaging me, actually thanking us for having that session. So thank you very much. And to everybody who's tuned in from wherever you have tuned in, thank you. For those who have woken up early, or people who have stayed up at night, or those who have are in the middle of their day, thank you very much to everybody who has tuned in, and thank you guys. It's been amazing. We shall catch up later. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thank you.
All right.
You ready to
A
go?
lot good.
Is it just in time?
Dima, you need to end the live session. We're all like going out, so just end the live session.